Hey up lads and lasses, Downfire here, back again with some more Infinite Lagrange. As you can see, we're back in the tier maker, and that means we have managed to grab hold of all of the cruisers and the variants. So quickly, big shout out to Spatial Monk, of course, because he just has all the ships. But he didn't have all of these ones, so also a thank you to Darth Yoshi, and also to Militime and Fluffy for providing the ones I was missing. So, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll jump straight in with the Callisto. So, the base Callisto is a very good ship. Like, just straight out the box, it's probably one of the strongest of the cruisers in terms of its raw damage output. It is weaker in general than every other cruiser in terms of its defensive capabilities, but as its combat rolls are back row anyway, it's going to be out the way. So the base variant does come with some very, very lovely cluster torpedoes, doing 350 damage per hit, and it has a lot. It fires 4 per thing, I think it is, or no, 8. It fires 8, and they split into 4, and it's 350, so 8 times 4. 350 times 4 times 8 is the calculation you need to do there. So it's a lot of damage output. Again, this is heavily mitigated though due to the fact that the armor on these ships can get quite high, especially in the cruiser range. You can see up to about 200 armor on some of the defensive variants, but most of the time they're about 100, so you're losing about a third of the damage output there. However, this will just absolutely decimate frigates, destroyers, anything below cruisers. This thing will chew through. So, with that bearing in mind, we're going to rank this as A, so pretty strong start. We then look at the variants though, and should we start off with? We'll start off with the slightly weaker variant. I think that's a better way to go. So, looking at the variants, we have the heavy UAV Carrot Cruiser. So, this one removes 4 of its missiles, 4 of those lovely torpedoes, and replaces 4 with 2 anti-aircraft UAVs. Again, it is sat in the back row, which is quite nice, and having those UAVs does help, but it does pretty much halve its damage, and the UAVs for only 2 anti-air, you're better bringing in a cruiser like the Predator or something like that has the ability to bring in fighters and use those as anti-air, or even the light cone. There's some area denial variants and stuff like that. So that bearing in mind, I think the heavy UAV version of the Callisto is nowhere near as good. It's probably B tier. It might be C tier. Yeah, it's half the damage. We're gonna put it in C tier. I think that feels about right. Again, there's just better ships. This thing's trying to do 2 things. It's trying to bring its damage and UAVs in, but because it's halved its damage and it's only got 2 UAVs, it's really not. It's not that good. You are better running different ships if you want an anti-air role, especially within the cruiser range. We then come to the absolute abomination of a ship. This thing is absolutely insanity. So up on your screen now, you'll see the Callisto Heavy Torpedo Raid Ship. Has 8 torpedoes, fires only 1 of them, and they're not cluster. But they're doing 2,500 damage per hit from the back row. This thing is the highest damage dealing cruiser in the entire game that we are currently aware of. I know there is some new ships coming into phase 2, so when I get to view those and have a look, we'll come back and maybe play around with the tier list a bit more. But yeah, this thing is just absolutely and utterly insane. Its damage output is incredible. even if, you know, a ST-59 with its broken 1000 armor, it's still going to take 1500 damage per hit 8 times. So yeah, it's pretty nuts. Okay, again, they're not particularly tanky, but this is, again, back row. This is S tier. I think this is the only ship that I've put into S tier that's a damage variant that is projectile and not kinetic damage instead of energy damage. I think this is the first ship I've ever put in a tier list at S tier under those circumstances. So yeah, it's pretty nuts. We then look at some of the free stuff. So we are looking at the CAS. Now the CAS 066 it's a great ship. You get it for free. The integrated variant comes with a heavy torpedo launcher with 8 missiles, apparently firing continuously. It does actually fire pretty continuously, to be honest. Doing 420 damage per hit at base. This can be upgraded, however, and it does do a nice bit of damage. On top of that, there is 2 heavy anti-ship cannons doing 350 damage each, and some little anti-air weapons. As this is the first cruiser that you actually pick up, I actually really think it's a good one. And again, this is one that you get for free. So I think this is a solid B tier for the base variant. We then come to its bigger damaging brother though, and we are looking at, I believe it's the artillery cruiser. Yes, there we go. So this forgoes some of its weapons. It loses the torpedoes, it loses the heavy cannons that are on the rear, and it gains the assault railgun. Now, this does 1800 base damage. It can be upgraded to do an extra 540. It does this attack every 11 seconds, so this is pretty rapid firing. So yeah, it's a very, very strong ship, to be honest with you. This is, again, one of those projectile ships that has so much damage output. The armor mitigation is starting to become redundant at this point. So, it has some generic battery, it's got a little anti-air, it's got much better armor. I believe it sits mid-row as well, which is quite nice as well. So it's not directly in the front row, so it won't be targeted first if you've got cruisers in the front row. I think it's a solid A tier. I actually believe it's better than the base Callisto. This is due to the fact that the damage mitigation on the Callisto does hurt a little bit. And I think, especially later on, when you start seeing battle cruisers out, the Callisto, that version of the Callisto is going to struggle a little bit more. With the artillery cruiser, the artillery CAS is going to bring you a little bit more ability to keep damage on and up and going into the late game. We then have an aircraft version. It comes with 2 Corvette docks. It's dropped its artillery variant giant mega cannon. It's dropped one of its heavy cannons off the base variant. It's kept the generic battery, but yeah, it's not good. It's low B tier, potentially even C tier, but there aren't that many ships within the cruisers that can carry corvettes. Again, it's 2 corvettes here. And as I've mentioned previously about carriers and how they work, I can't really rate them any higher than a B because they're so situationally needing, you know, your pulls to also pull an A or an S rank corvette or fighter or bomber, that it is unfortunately all of them will probably sit in B tier. Next up, we are looking at the Chimeras. So, the base Chimera is very, very shiny indeed. It comes with a Fortress battery system with 3 dual cannons that fire 2 shots each every 16 seconds, dealing 350 damage. It then has its generic battery system as well, which is sort of anti-air. But it also comes with an assault missile system, which is 280 damage for 12 missiles firing, which is every 22 seconds. So it is pretty good. And it's very semi-dependent on one of its strategies. Sink all ships focus fire. Now this strategy sinks all weapons in the system to focus fire one single target, reduce cooldown by 80% every 90 seconds for 10 seconds. That strategy just absolutely skyrockets its potential damage output. But without that, it does sort of weirdly split fire a little bit, which is odd, and it doesn't work too well when it's doing that. So with that in mind, and the fact that what we've got in A tier and S tier already, it's probably a B tier ship. It's high B tier though. So yeah, it's certainly no slouch. We then come up and have a look at the, where is it? Ah, there it is. Right. So we are now looking at the cannon variant. So this drops one of its missile. It drops its missile system and gains extra cannons instead. Now these cannons are flat out more damage. They are lower attack intervals as well, and I believe these all target the exact same target. So it is just straight up better. It also has an extra slot for enhancement. So I believe like the base Chimera can get around 42,000 DPM, whereas this version can get about 45,000 DPM. So it's definitely a lot better. I think it's not quite as strong as the base Callisto due to the fact that its alpha strikes nowhere near as high. Sorry, not high enough to really set it over. Yes, it's got 5 cannons. Yes, they're firing 2 shots each. But this Callisto's shooting, 4 missiles, and there's 8 times 4, and it's just like it's an absurd amount of damage output, even though it's got lower alpha. So I think its DPM, the Callisto's DPM, is higher than even the heavy cannon variant of the Chimera. Now we also have the defensive variant. It's not as good for certain as you kind of expect. It unfortunately sits in the mid row, and on top of sitting in the mid row, it's losing a bit of its damage output. So if we have a look here, sorry, I'm just grabbing the stats up. It has a massive amount of crit reduction, which is really, really nice actually, but it loses the missile system for it. So for quite considerably less damage output, for an extra 100 armor, I think it is roughly. I think it goes to about 220 armor maxed out, whereas a base cruiser, not including the Callistos, hit 100 roughly. Some of them are a little bit lower than that. It's pretty bad, really. And because it's mid-tier, it's mid-row, so it's not sat on front row. So it's only going to tank for like about half of the cruisers in this list. Most of the Chimeras, the other 2 variants of Chimera, sit on the front row. Your IOs are front row. So yeah, it's I don't know where to put it. I think it's low A, high B. In my personal opinion, because it will tank. It'll tank for Callistos, Predators of rear row, KCPs are mid row as well. So there's a good chance that the Chimeras are targeted first. So it does okay. If this was front row, it'd probably be S tier, because it would now be the only defensive variant within the game of the cruisers. So definitely a lot stronger in that regard. Next up, we have the KCCVs 2.0. I wonder what happened to 1.0, but we have no idea. So, the base integrator type, this is another one of the free ones that you get. Again, it's not a bad, like terribly bad cruiser. It's free as well, so do use them if you don't have any other better cruisers. But it's got an ultra heavy siege torpedo that does 420 damage, fires 3 of those, and that's every 20 seconds. So it's not, as you can already tell, it's not particularly high damage, even in comparison to what we've currently got running. Is it better than the KCPV? Is it better than the CAS 066? No. So we're going to put that low B tier. I believe even the base variant of the CAS with the torps is just flat out better. I say flat out better. It's marginally better. There's really not that much into it. We then have the aircraft type. Now, the aircraft type is the only other carrier that you can get other than the Predators, I think. And it brings 2 large fighter capacities. Now, this does set it apart from the Predator, and this is due to the fact that the Predators, I think, are all medium hangar size, which means you can't fit bombers. This is large, however, which means you can fit bombers, which does probably make it slightly better into a siege sort of role, or if you know you're going up against larger ships such as battle cruisers and that kind of thing, this is definitely better. I do think it's actually flat out better than the base variant. Yeah, it's lost its giant damaging weapon at the front, but it still kept the Hexadex missile system, and it still kept its anti-air. And, you know, it's now allowing you to carry 2 bombers or 2 fighters, 2 large fighters in. So I do think it's better than the base KCCPV. That is a mouthful, isn't it? KCCPV 2.0. So, next up we have the light railgun cruiser, which she thinks almost the same, but it's not. It comes with a better railgun. This one does 700 2 rounds every 20 seconds, so it's flat out better damage-wise at 1400 damage versus 1200 damage than the base. And yeah, it retains pretty much everything else. It keeps the generic weapon systems, its hexadeca fire missile system. So yeah, it's going to be B tier. It's higher than both of the other KCCPVs. So yeah, it's not bad. It's not great though. So we now come to the last of the KCPV 2.0s, and that's the pulse cannon variant. Now, it keeps its hexadec, and it keeps its generic anti-air, and it loses the giant railgun or the hangar capabilities, and it gains a pulse turret, which does 300 damage per hit every 5 seconds, so it's very rapid firing. Again, this has cooling on it as well, so you can actually decrease that time. This allows its DPM to be pretty high, and can certainly dish out a considerably large amount of DPM in comparison to some of the other variants. Again, energy weapon as well. Do I think it's better than the base? I think it's still B tier, unfortunately, just because of what we've currently come across already. I think it's just flat out, it's nowhere near as good as the other KCCPV with, you know, 400 damage per minute. Although saying that, this can fire 4 times within that time, so that's 1200 DPM. So it probably is actually better due to the fact that its armor is mitigated due to the fact it's being energy, although there is % decrease on that as well, but lower damage weapon. So yeah, I think it's slightly better. I don't think it's good as the base CAS. That's really interesting to really think of, isn't it? There's an energy weapon variant of the KCCPV, and it's still not as good as the base version of the CAS, in my opinion. I still think the CAS is a better ship. As well, it's front row, so it's, you know, tanking for you. We then come to the light cones. So, if you bear with me just a few seconds while I bring this up. So, the light cone, which is a really odd name, I don't quite understand that. The base version comes with the anti-ship missile array. This is 280 damage, fires 8 of them every 24 seconds. It also comes with an extra anti-ship missile system, which is 33 damage, only fires 1 of those every 7 seconds. That's mostly anti, so fighter, corvette, that kind of thing. Also has a defensive battery on here as well, so it is sat in more of a anti-fighter role than it is anti-ship, and this is due to the fact that its missile system just really isn't that good. I think this is worse than the Energy and the Railgun variant. Actually, no, it's probably not as bad. Yeah, no, it is probably worse than the Railgun variant of the KCPV. So yeah, the light cone, a bit of a disappointment. It does also come with the Tundra anti-aircraft UAV system, which brings 2 UAVs in, but there is just a flat-out better version. So let's talk a little bit about that. So if I come here and check that, we have the anti-aircraft type. Now it keeps one of its anti-ship missile systems, but then it gains 2 extra of the missile defense systems, and these will shoot down enemy missiles. They'll also target corvettes and fighters, which is really cool. So you got anti-missile missiles. And then it also has the defensive cannons, which 4 of them, which is quite nice. And it has the Tundra UAV system, again bringing 2 anti-air UAVs. Now, as a flat-out screener for anti-air, this is better, like much better than the base multi-role version. Again, I don't particularly like it, and this is mostly due to the fact that so far I haven't found a use for having so much anti-air. Usually I'm killing off the carriers before the anti-air, and I've tried this with the Winged Hussar, the area denial variant, and it didn't seem to actually kill any fighters or bombers or corvettes, yet I managed to kill all the carriers in the time that it took to do nothing. So I'm not sure if that's a bug, or maybe I just wasn't running enough Winged Hussars of that variant anyway. But yeah, definitely not great. Oh, something to note, these all have this warning system which give them a really nice chance of being missed by missiles by 30%. So that is something they've got extra going for them. They have this extra little bit of tankiness where they can dodge incoming missiles by about 30%. We then have the offensive missile corvette. Now this gains some extra anti-ship, again doing 336 base damage, which isn't amazing. It has a generic battery system, again not particularly great. It loses the missiles from the other variants, and it still retains the Tundra. It swaps out the anti-air for a spotter UAV. Now, a spotter UAV, we're not 100% certain, but it does seem to be working, has a increases the weapon hit rate of all ships within your fleet. This puts this into like an interesting like support damage role, and yeah, it's actually not bad. I got a couple of guys that run specifically that one, just a few of them in their fleet, and they have told me that there is a considerable like hit chance increase when they are running them, which is pretty cool. We are then looking at probably my second favorite looking ship in the game after the series, and that is the Predator. Now, the Predator's base variant is a pretty standard sort of looking carrier. It has its aircraft loading system, allowing you to house 4 medium fighters, and it has a projectile weapon system, which does, it's okay. Octafire missile launcher array does 65 damage per hit, and shoots 8, and there's 2 of those. So it's a fair bit of damage there. Has defensive batteries as well, but due to the fact that it can carry in 4 medium fighters, does make it really quite strong. Unfortunately, because it's a carrier, it has to go in B tier. We'll have to put it at the bottom of B tier for now, and it's due to the fact that if you don't have S rank fighters or corvettes or whatever for these carriers, there is no point running them. They're very situational and very dependent on your pulls from boxes. We then have probably the best variant, of the Predator. Now, this is the tactical aircraft cruiser. It retains its lovely little 4 aircrafts, so it can bring 4 medium fighters in. It then also has the option, it also drops some of the missiles, which do very little damage, and brings 3 field info UAV pods. Now, I'm at a bit of an odds with this one because we're not 100% sure what the strategy does, because the strategy reads on here: when your fleet includes cruisers, it prioritizes fire support for them by dispatching aircraft, increases the aircraft's support duration by 30%. Does that mean it increases the UAVs, or does it increase the aircraft you send out? And then if we look at the description of what it does, the missile system fitted on the bow is replaced with an aviation command UAV system, enabling it to issue comprehensive commands to nearby aircraft and increase their hit rate and evasion. So, in my mind, that means that these UAVs for your entire fleet increases your carriers, well, not your carriers, all your fighters and corvettes' ability to hit rate, and increases their dodge rate. Which is amazing. If you're running this in carrier fleets, this is fantastic. In pretty much every other fleet, I don't think it's going to be particularly useful. Again, it's B tier. It's probably higher B tier just because of its support capability. So we're going to put it higher than the base variant for certain. But again, we need to get some more testing done on this. And if it is only affecting fighters and bombers, it is only very situationally useful in a fleet where you're running a lot of carriers, or more carriers than you might do usually. We then have the anti-aircraft variant. This comes with drops its missiles on the front for anti-air variants of the missiles, which do 40 damage a hit. There's 8 of those again. Generic batteries as well for anti-air. And again, you are bringing in 4 aircrafters here as well. This would be a very, very good ship if you had the likes of Spores, which are anti-aircraft fighters, and that kind of thing. So you bring those in on top of this, and then you've got a pretty good screen against fighters. Again, it's better than the base variant because I believe it fills a specific role better than this sort of multi-role, which trying to do some damage and stuff like that. Specialized roles do tend to favor better into a more balanced fleet composition, and this is due to the fact that means you can, push for a higher damage fleet, or push for a more defensive fleet, or mix and match a little bit easier than using multiple multi-role ships. We then have another one of my favourite looking ships in the game. We have the IO. Now, everyone's probably sat here going, the IO is the best in the game, and unfortunately it's really not after you look at that Callisto. So, the base IO has the dual fire iron cannon. Upgraded, it does 660 damage per hit with 118 extra damage with an attack interval at 8.4 seconds. And yeah, it's energy, so it's good. It has a generic missile system on top of that, running 100 damage per hit, fires 8 of those every 20 seconds. It's not bad. And has integrated battery system. A lot of the cruisers come with these integrated battery systems to have some form of anti-air screening, which is quite nice. It also has a nice little feature. All of the IOs have this, and this is a high-speed turning engine. Supposedly it's meant to help with weapon aiming, but what it does do is increase ship evasion by 15%, and it does increase the hit rate of the main weapon by 5%. So I guess it does sort of do what it's doing. Now, unfortunately, this is front line, which does suck a bit because it can only go up to 80 armor upgraded, and I think due to that, it's probably... I think it's low A tier. It's better than the defensive. It's worse than the other Chimera. The other Chimera is better in the front row slot than the IO, because these do start dying very, very quickly later on in the game. So yeah, definitely a bit of an odd one. It's a shame really. But not to worry. We have other variants of the IO. One of them might be better. We then have the high-speed ion cannon. Now, I don't quite understand this one, because I can't work out if it's high speed is referring to its cannon or to the fact that it does the exact same base ship speed as the other IO. I think it is referring to the rapid fire ion cannon, which does 340 damage per hit. It has a 4-second attack duration, so you know when you see those lasers and they burn for quite a few times, that's yeah, it's burning for 4 seconds. I believe it's each tick is 340 damage, and it can do that every 1 second. Yeah, it fires a lot. However, I don't believe the half in damage for the increased fire rate is actually worth it in this situation. Pretty much all of its other weapon systems are identical. It has actually got slightly better missile systems, with the anti-ship being 420 damage, so a larger alpha in that case, rather than lots of small hits. But yeah, and it has the additional propulsion systems and stuff like that. I think this is also A tier. I think it's behind the base IO, but I'm not certain. I would need to test this, but I unfortunately don't have this one. This is the one Darth Yoshi sent me over. So yeah, not bad, but not great. Now, we have the last version. We have the IO Siege variant. Now, this has a massive 670 damage, which is straight over better than the base IO, firing every 6 seconds with a 10-second duration, so it's an increased duration, so more ticks, has a shorter cooldown, increased damage, and its strategy is actually not bad at all, increasing, it only appears to affect during base attacks, so at sieges, but it will absolutely and utterly decimate enemy bases, like seriously decimate them. This is probably the best siege ship I've seen within the game. This thing can melt bases. Due to the fact that it's like flat out better than the base variant of the IO in terms of deep damage, its weapon system targets exactly the same ships. It's got a longer duration, so it's going to deal more ticks of damage. It's got a reduced cooldown on the weapon, so it's firing more frequently. I think it's flat out better, even if you include the strategy of the base IO, because you've also got the extra roll that if you do go into a battle against a player base, this will melt a player's base very, very rapidly. So that is all the variants. Hope you've enjoyed watching this video. It's been interesting. It's been hard work trying to get some of these variants as well. Like some are just missing from like the regular people I had to go to. So again, big thank you to the guys that just messaged me from the last video and sent me over some of these details and stuff so I could get this video out to you guys. So yeah, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time.